Next is Nadya. She's a media personality. She founded Green Kampong, which grew into an online resource for sustainable living. She launched Let Elephants Be Elephant campaign, which aired across Asia, now focusing on Sumatra elephants. She is the UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador. She joined head of UN Environment in launching the Global Clean Seas campaign. You have been very successful as a media personality. What first moved you into environmental work?
Actually, the seeds of being mindful about the world that we live in actually started from my mom. She planted those seeds in my mind when I was a child. She was talking about living off the grid and being self-sustainable, and also about the 2 orangutans that she rescued when she was living in Indonesia. My mom's Australian. So I grew up with this, and then I kind of got busy being famous, which was never an aspiration of mine, but it just so happened that I had all of the conditions that allowed that to happen. And then when I realized I had a voice, I knew that I had to use it for something that was a little bit more important than trivial things.
So this goes into another question. Why is it important to you to pursue this? Do you think you are creating an impact with your voice, raising awareness on environmental issues? Is it enough if we only talk about it?
It's definitely not enough if we only talk about it, that's for sure. If you see a problem, you need to look for a solution as opposed to just whining about something. And that's always something that I have done. You know, when I wanted to wear nice jewelry, I thought, okay, I want to wear nice jewelry, but let me think about it. How do I do that? What goes into creating a wedding band? Well, it's 20 tons of mind waste, toxic mind waste. So I can't go out there and just buy beautiful jewelry like my girlfriends do. So what do? I create a sustainable jewelry line using recycled jewelry, pre-loved diamonds, and sustainably sourced gems. And it's the same when I built a home. We built one of Singapore's first eco homes. And it's the same when I learned about the situation that elephants were facing around the world due to the ivory trade. I said, okay, why don't we do something? We created a campaign. We created a documentary for National Geographic. That went around the region. It was a campaign that was supported by the US, UK, Australian governments, and I addressed the UN General Assembly alongside Chelsea Clinton. And now I'm focusing on the Sumatran elephants because I am from Sumatra. I'm half Indonesian, and we have, in Sumatra and Aceh, we have orangutan, tiger, rhino, and elephant. And it's the only place in the world that we have all of these charismatic species together in one island. And it's quite sad actually, because the Sumatran elephant really doesn't get the attention, the funds, or any of the government support that it needs to, and it is its own subspecies. So I've just come off the back of organizing a 2-day conference for the Sumatran elephants, a 2-day roundtable.
How was that?
It was great because a lot of the people who have been working in the field for a long time, the very few that are, and those who are from overseas that are collecting data, have not actually had the opportunity to come together. And I brought in specialists from India, from Sri Lanka, from the UK, and also some people who have been working with orangutans actually, but they have a very good network and understanding of the policies and the kind of politics of working on the ground in Sumatra.
Interesting. With your fame, is it easier or more difficult with your current work? What challenges you are facing trying to get people to understand and act?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, I think. I have a platform, so it really depends. And so yesterday we were talking about the 4 different levels of community living in the vicinity of elephants. You have those who live like abutting the elephant territories, then you have those who are a little bit further away, then you have those who are completely remote, living in the big cities, and then we said 4 community is the community of people who are working for the elephants. The community who live away from the elephants are a lot easier to sway than those living in direct contact with the elephants, because those people have human-elephant conflict issues. So with my voice, I have the power to share messages and to educate people about the realities of what the Sumatran elephants are facing in this case. And yet, at this conference, the roundtable, it was partly to introduce me to the elephant circle, so they didn't think, oh, here she is, who's just some celebrity what's to put her name to a cause. So there are some boundaries in that sense, but I do think that the opportunities far outweigh the boundaries.
What is your make on this to make this world a better place? What is your idea of giving back to the community? Is it a domain for a few people only?
You know, I have been thinking a lot about, like, for example, CSR programs.
Okay.
And that form of giving back in the sense of, okay, we're going to go and plant some trees. Now, of course, I'm talking about environmental issues, or we're going to go and do a beach cleanup. And so those things that they can actually plug into the NGOs to support the NGOs, where the NGOs don't need to waste their time and money and lack of skills doing those things that they find challenging, and focus rather on the task at hand. And that those programs should not be a 1 year commitment. It should be a 3 to 5 year commitment, so that the NGOs actually can plan their programs, because NGOs who are given money for a year or given money for 2 years and then the funding goes away, then those programs don't have continuity. So it's quite disruptive and actually doesn't have longevity. Another thing that, you know, what we're doing with the elephants, and it's to me, there is absolutely no way we can do conservation if we don't focus on community. So that looks at how we can create vocational centres and create infrastructure, not roads, but schools, libraries, soccer fields, in areas that are not elephant habitat, to encourage those who are currently abutting that habitat to actually move into other areas that are not traditional elephant territory. So it's just looking at things slightly differently.
I don't get a chance to be on the same stage or even meet two amazing women, so I'm just going to ask you straight up. How do you balance it out? How do you balance your work, your life, your giving back to the community? How can you do it all and still sitting here?
For me, I really do have these 4 pillars that I always say, and balance is a huge focus in my life. So I have family, I have my spiritual pursuits, I have my paid work, and then I have my unpaid work. So those are the four posts that hold my roof up. And I juggle. We all do. You know, I think women juggle, well, I don't think, I know women juggle far more than men do. You know, men, as I was just saying in the waiting room, you know, the husband goes to work and comes back. You know, we have to think about dinner, we have to think about, okay, we need to make sure that daughters, and my youngest is homeschooling, so I have to make sure that she doesn't miss her fencing, or she doesn't miss her art classes, or she doesn't miss her Chinese, or all of these things. And I'm juggling also making sure that I'm finding meaning in my life by giving back. And actually that takes up about 80% of my time. But I do really try to maintain that focus. For example, I just came back from 10 days in the Himalayas, which was a spiritual retreat, and then now I charge into like 3 or 4 conferences within 15 days. You know, so that's my balance. And I'm not sure if it's actually balanced.
It is balanced. Well, thank you very much, both of you. I'm still starstruck by both of you, and I hope you guys enjoy the session. Yes?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.